Welcome to another episode of 3D Printing News Unpeeled, live with yours Peels and 3dprint.com. Today we've got a number of news items and we're going to run down the day's additive manufacturing and 3D printing news. And the first news item is that XYZ Printing has released a new printer. So XYZ Printing is part of Kimpo, and new Kimpo is a really large assembly company, manufacturing company that makes millions of printers and phones and all this stuff for other people. And they came onto the scene selling tens of thousands of inexpensive desktop material extrusion printers, and then made the leap to focus on more additive manufacturing. So now we've got the XYZ printing showcasing its MFG Pro 236XS, which is an open powder bed fusion system, which means you can put any material in it that you want, which make it a lot cheaper to run and a lot more flexible for a lot of people. You have access to all the settings. And it has a build rate of about 22 millimeters per hour. And it can do a complete build cycle that kind of essentially reduced it and changed it a bit. So it does a build cycle with 22 hours build to do a full build, and then 2 hour cooling cycle, which means that you can just do it at the same time of the day. And I think that could be quite interesting for a lot of new customers. Now, what's interesting is that we are seeing companies like Farsoon, Xeon Bright Laser, E Plus, trying to penetrate the industrial powder bed fusion metals and polymer market from China. And we're seeing these companies, and it's always like it's kind of this Banquo at the Banquo's ghost at the banquet kind of thing. Are these guys going to really play a big role? Are they going to be in the periphery? In what kind of a market are they going to play a big role? And this kind of thing, like the biggest problem for these guys is, of course, to get people to trust them. To say, hey, yeah, we used to make little desktop printers in the case of XYZ printing, but now we're capable of making a industrial powder bed fusion system. You should buy this instead of an AOS machine. And it looks like XYZ Printing got a bit of a success story on its hand right now, because it managed to sell 4 of these things to Jawstec. And Jawstec is a quite large American service company. And this could be a major break for them. I mean, we don't really know, of course, if this is going to mean that a lot of people are going to buy these systems, but it is a vote of confidence by a known player in the industry. So, and that's kind of the thing that these guys have to do. That bit by bit, client by client, have to convince them that this is a viable solution. So, it's a great step forward for them. A big difference from what they were doing before. Yeah, we'll have to pay attention next couple of years, see how on par these guys will come with the other powder bed fusion, other technologies. Japanese company Polyplastics has just released its POM, polyoxymethylene, right? POM 3D printing material. So POM is a really highly used polymer, industrial polymer, in a lot of like high value polymer kind of applications. The company Polyplastics, sorry, says that it has been able to achieve properties very close to injection molded polymers. And they have fiddled with the grades of POM and the settings and the kind of the setup to make this technology much more worthwhile. It's, by the way, it should be noted that it's not advisable to run POM on like your home machine. You will need some kind of industrial quality ventilation and these kind of things if you want to print POM, in my opinion. But apart from that, this is a very exciting material with some very, very exciting properties, and a lot of people would have already been looking to use this and are always going to be on the lookout for new POM variants. Other people have tried. It's traditionally POM has been a very difficult material to use for material extrusion. It's a high crystallinity material, a very rapid rate of crystallization, so it's very difficult to get that material to print correctly and to devise a material, to compound and develop a material that works for people in a kind of industrial setting, even because it's just such a tricky material to work with. So this is a good thing. Polyplastics is a company you may not have heard of. It's actually a part of Daisel, which is a $3.9 billion Japanese chemical group. Now, we don't know if this is like an experiment by somebody somewhere, or if this is a bigger move by this company into polymers. But given Japan's quite a limited involvement in 3D printing, apart from, for example, Mitsubishi, which bought Dutch Filaments and has a sizable material extrusion operation in filaments, there's been very little involvement with corporate Japan in just the desktop market. And 3D printing overall, Nikon, of course, famously is now buying SLM solutions. So, is this a sign of Japan waking up, and are they going to be making more investments in the market? I think that would be very welcome, I think, for a lot of people to have more materials and more involvement by more companies. So, a little small thing, maybe they just want to put Palm on the market. There's just a little experiment by somebody in the company. That could also be possible, but it could be a signal of something greater and better. This is news that two students, Isaak Thornton and Kathryn Zimlich of the Montana State University Center for Biofilm Engineering, have managed to essentially replicate a biofilm. What they've done is they've placed bacteria, so bacteria they can select, right, into liquid hydrogel, right, and they're then they're solidifying the material, the photopolymer, using laser, and this will then make a basic biofilm. And the idea is that in that place of that biofilm, they can study that bacteria and they can study the performance of biofilms. I like this because it's creative and it's a new way of doing something that a lot of people are working hydrogels, a lot of people are working with trying to using photopolymers and research and photopolymers and these kinds of research. But this kind of thing is, I think, a really creative way to allow them to improve their study of bacteria. And I like the idea of improving lab results, improving lab equipment, improving processes through these kind of things. Another thing that Zimlich, one of the researchers, said, and she said that one thing that's becoming clear is that there's a potential to treat these pathogenic bacteria by altering the interactive biofilm environment instead of trying to use harsh chemical products. And I'm completely new to the world of biofilm, let's say, but these kind of things, a completely new approach to combating this stuff that's these potentially harmful, in some cases, some environments, bacteria. Combating them in a new way through intensified study through 3D printing is, I think, that could be quite an exciting thing for all of us, I think. And I like this because it's kind of out of there. Biofilm and 3D printing, I would not have expected this earlier. The next news item is our top news item, and I don't think you would have ever guessed it unless you saw the story floating around it. It was on PR Newswire, and I think one or two people picked it up. But it hasn't really been covered widely, and I love this story. So essentially, it's a company called OPT, which you may have heard of. They did some swabs and they do some other things, and they've designed a brush mat for the industrial brush company. And this product is called Polybrush. So you're thinking, what is a brush mat? That seems like a really low value kind of item. Can you really 3D print this? And yes, you can 3D print this. And you're still probably wondering, what is the business case? Now, these mats are, they're sheet mats. What they're used for is linear vibratory conveying. So essentially, it's used to convey materials in a way without harming them and touching them in a very quiet way, kind of like a conveyor belt. But instead of that, the brushes move and propagate the thing forward. 3M, usually a super innovative company, has this Brushlon 331B and 321B brush mats that are used like this in a lot of industrial conveyancing solutions. And what the OPT team have done is they've worked together with the industrial brush company, which is literally what it says on the tin, that to make this thing available, and then the industrial brush company will distribute it. If we look a little bit closer, the advantage is they will print the thing as a whole item, and you can yourself cut it to the specified size for your conveyor belt kind of setup thing. These are made in Massachusetts, in the United States of America, using OPT's 3D printing technology, out of about 30% bio-based plastics. The OPT basically has a technology that is a roll-to-roll photolithography platform. The idea is that it can manufacture really long parts or a series of parts or just continuous parts, such as, for example, with these kind of brush mats out of a printer. They do this by having their own software, their own simulation software, and their own kind of printer hardware, and they all work together. And what they do is they go to businesses and then they try to develop applications together with them. They also work in architected materials, so they're really trying to design materials from the ground up that are very exciting and have lots of applications, are really good at specific applications. So they have fur and feather type of materials as well. And now foam type of materials. And now they have these brush mats. And this is, it's very much a startup type of approach. Like, hey, let's own everything. Let's do the technology, the software, and produce the parts. What I like is that they're working with industry partners to distribute it, and also probably presumably to get the industry knowledge from them to figure out like, hey, do you make it cheap? What do these brushes have to do? What's the operating environment? What's the weight? All this kind of stuff. So I like that. I like this as an application development thing. I like that they can capture a lot of value. Their success will depend, though, on their ability to do business development, their ability to market their offering, and so people come to them. So to me, it's a startup with risks for the people involved. But if they get the right application, they could find some incredibly huge applications to exploit in a very efficient way. So I thought this is probably an application where it definitely has been top of mind. I haven't considered this at all. Brushes and brush mats and stuff like that. I didn't even know that this kind of thing existed before today. I looked at kind of brush fur type of stuff, but for other type of applications, I never realized that this was like perhaps a really perfect high value application. And I just love this. It just shows us how much more is out there and how much more we could be doing if we were very creative about it. And that's it, guys. I hope you really enjoyed it today. And my name is Joris Peels, and this is another edition of 3D Printing News Unpeeled.